welcome back to Perkins Pipes. Everything is symbolic in this video. Got my American flag hat because we're going to be talking about a famous period from American history. I really should say infamous. My shirt says Chaotic Resemblance. It's one of the absolutely best new heavy metal Christian bands, and there is something very, very chaotic in what we're going to talk about today. I've got a Missouri Meerschaum, this beautiful hardwood Missouri Meerschaum from Chris at Pipe Philosophy. Thank you again to Chris. And I've got my first ever own blend, thanks to components from Skylar Grimes, the North Georgia Piper. Put together some dark-fired Kentucky with some red Virginia into what I'm calling my Hatfields and McCoys blend. That gives you an idea of what we're going to be talking about today. So, let's get this guy lit. Let's get to talking. Got a little bit of wind here. Okay. All right. Having smoked each of those, the dark-fired Kentucky and the red Virginia separately, I can honestly say I do taste both in here. So, pretty decent if I do say so myself. Okay. So many people know about the Hatfield and McCoy feud that went on in the 1800s. In fact, it's been played up in so many stories and movies and television shows. Waylon Jennings, in one of his songs, he's talking to his wife, and he says, this successful life we're living's got us feuding like the Hatfields and McCoys. So it's really just passed into certainly American English expressions. And a lot of people may know about it because of the Kevin Costner miniseries several years back, simply called Hatfields and McCoys, in which he played the leader, really, of the Hatfield family, Devil Anse Hatfield. William Anderson Hatfield went by the name Devil Anse. And the leader of the McCoy side was played by Bill Paxton, a guy named Randolph McCoy, but usually referred to as Rannell, R-A-N-E-L, Rannell McCoy. Number of good actors in it. Powers Booth played Valentine McCoy, also who went by the name Valentine Hatfield, also went by the name Wall Hatfield. Mara Winningham, I believe, was Sarah McCoy, Randall's wife. So some good actors in it, and I really enjoy it. I enjoy the acting in it. I enjoy the storytelling of that miniseries. And so I was rewatching it again here recently. And after rewatching it, I thought, I want to read a book on the Hatfields and McCoys, because I never had it. So I found one. We'll bring up a picture here for you, called Blood Feud. Blood Feud by, I'll check my note here, Lisa Alther, A-L-T-H-E-R, Lisa Alther. And as I was reading it, I was simply struck by the page after page, round after round of, quite honestly, senseless knucklehead violence. I mean, it's a book that, as you read it, you just get overwhelmed. And some way you can't even keep track of the players in the play. I mean, there's just so many relatives of McCoys and Hatfields, and not all aligned with their own kin. Some McCoys actually favored Hatfields, and some Hatfields actually favored McCoys, and then you had the ones that were diehard for their family, and just killing after killing after killing, and burning of houses. And Sarah McCoy, Randall's wife, was beaten at one point, to the point that she never fully recovered from the beating that she took, and just washes over you as you read a book. This tidal wave of violence. And it made me think of two things. The Roman orator and statesman Cicero, who lived from 106 to 43 BC, when he was starting his career, and really the speech that made him as a young lawyer and a young orator, this is before he entered politics and became a statesman, before he started writing philosophy and all this kind of stuff. He delivered a speech called the Pro Roscio Amerino. It was in defense of a fellow named Roscius from a region called Ameria. And the very end of that speech, the last line, as a matter of fact, I know by heart. I know by heart because I have brought it up with my students so many times over the years. Whenever there's been some large-scale tragic event, and make no mistake that the taking of even one human life is tragic. But we've had some of the large-scale things, everything from 9/11 to some school shooting or something, just, the Boston Marathon tragedy of some years ago. Whenever one of those things would happen, I bring this line out to my students. When Cicero ends his speech, he says, Nam cum horis omnibus, aliquid atrociter fieri videmus et audimus. Etiam qui natura metissimi sumus, ad siduitate molestiarum. Omnem sensum humanitatis ex animis amittimus. Now what that means is, and bear in mind, this is a man who is writing in the 1st century BC, and you tell me whether this rings true, if this resonates even in our modern age in the 21st century. He says, for when at every hour we see or hear some atrocity taking place, he says, even those of us who by nature are most gentle lose all sense of humanity from our souls. Powerful line. And as I was reading the Hatfields and McCoys story, naturally, that line came back. So you got the McCoys in Kentucky, hence the dark-fired Kentucky. You've got the Hatfields in West Virginia, hence the red Virginia tobacco here. And it is indeed a shameful, it's an embarrassing event in American history. One that was quite chaotic indeed. But I mentioned that this is a Christian heavy metal band. And folks, there is simply no other way to say it. If you are a follower of Jesus Christ, you will not get caught up in what is simply knucklehead violence. Now, I use that term knucklehead violence because sometimes violence in this broken world of ours, right? We're living in a post-Eden world. Christ has not returned. So this is not yet what we're supposed to be. Sometimes violence is necessary. I'm talking about war. When soldiers have to go and defend the innocent, there's violence involved, and sadly, it is necessary. And we're grateful for those men and women in our various branches of the armed services who do that and do that protective work for our country. But because you're upset with somebody because somebody stole your pig, as one of the early triggering events in the Hatfield-McCoy feud turned out to be, the question of a stolen pig? Come on. Come on. And I can say, I can understand where some of this stuff comes from, right? You've been done wrong. You've been cut off on the highway. Somebody zipped in front of you. Somebody took your parking spot at the grocery store. We're angry about this, that, and the other thing. Politically. Get angry with your neighbor because their tree is overhanging your property and they won't cut it, won't trim it back. Folks, Jesus' response is, let it go. Let it go. Now, it's not easy, but it is simple. A follower of Christ like his or her Lord is willing to suffer wrong being done to him or her and not to get revenge. Christ says it very clearly. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. I will repay, not you. That's not on you. And a lot of these people living at this time, they would have known the Bible, went to church. Somewhere along the way, it didn't sink in. And it's not even just a matter of principles sinking in. We're talking about heart change. We're talking about heart transformation. Right? This is what happens when someone surrenders his or her life to Jesus Christ. Things change. The Christian blues artist, brilliant musician. Had a chance to interview him once for my podcast that I co-hosted called The Wild Man and Steve Show. A guy named Glenn Kaiser. He did a couple of just straight blues albums with another fellow named Daryl Mansfield. And one of his songs is he says, things I used to would do, I don't do no more. Things I used to would do, I don't do no more. Things I used to would do, I don't do no more. Been a great change since I was born. And what they mean is born again. Just as the man asked Jesus, how can a person be born again when he is old? Can't go back in his mother's womb and be born again. And Jesus says you've got to be born of water and the Spirit. Now, yeah, this turned out to be not just about my pipe blend, which, by the way, I am enjoying. This actually turns into something pretty heavy spiritually and theologically. At some point, staying angry with relatives and friends, and I'm people today, most people watching this channel. I mean, it's not like you're going out there and you're hunting people down and burning down their houses like the Hatfields and McCoys. But what kind of anger continues to feed that rage in your soul? Why are you not at peace? Why do you have a hard time going to sleep at night sometimes? Maybe why do you find yourself gravitating some other hobbies besides smoking a pipe? To numb the pain and to dull the anger. Folks, it's about giving that over to Jesus Christ. He says, I will take care of it. How he does it, baby, that's up to him. It's not up to you. It's not up to me. I can't help but think, scratch that, I can't help but know that if the people who claim to follow Jesus Christ really do surrender to him and let him take control of them, let the Holy Spirit, the third person of the Holy Trinity, dwell within them, things you used to would do, you don't do no more. Folks, I hope you've enjoyed this one. This meant a lot to me. As Malcolm Guite likes to say, I do these little things in order at last to do nothing. Or as I like to say in Latin, Parva ago ut tandem, nihil agam. Have a wonderful day.
There was a man who walked the earth, diesel and dust.